Welcome back. In this current session, we are going to discuss on dimensionality reduction. It is part of data pre-processing only that we are already in continuation of discussion. And dimensionality reduction is one type of machine learning. It is actually comes under unsupervised machine learning. So and we can consider this in data pre-processing as well, because you will understand that it is important for many of the machine learning algorithms that cannot work before we actually implement this dimensionality reduction. So it is actually can be thought of as one kind of data pre-processing technique, and it is a part of machine learning as well. Okay, so let us start on this. So dimensionality reduction, from the name you understand that it is kind of reducing the dimension. Now what do I try to mean by reducing dimension? Okay, so it is a if we take the data set, right? Whenever we are working on any data science project, it starts with the data set. So when we have the data set, then I have multiple number of columns. I have explained earlier that the columns in the data set, they are termed as the features, and there is one or multiple columns which are actually the output that we want to generate or want to predict from rest of the columns. So that particular column is termed as the target, and all the rest of the columns are termed as the feature. So maybe if I have some 10 features and one target column, then my purpose is actually to have some algorithm to generate or to predict that whether from these all these 10 features, if I can assume or predict the target value, right? So but in case of suppose this feature set, if instead of 10 columns it can have some 100 of columns. Okay, so if there are a lot of columns in the feature set, then it is actually practically impossible sometimes to really work with them and generate the target. So sometimes it is impossible. So in those cases, it is important that instead of using all the features, all the columns present in the data set, I take some of them, or maybe I process them in such a way that they are reduced. So here my purpose is that maybe if I have 100 columns in a feature set, then if I can reduce it to 20 and then use those 20 to predict the target value. Okay, so you understand that it is not just like that as I have many of the features, so I'm just eliminating lot of them to get some few and to do the prediction. Of course that is not that easy or simple, because when I have so many features, then if I am removing or if I am processing, then I have to keep in mind that for calculating or for predicting the target, I should have adequate information and I should have the correct information, right? So if I eliminate something and then I go for some wrong prediction, then this elimination actually is not going to work. Okay, so I have to do the dimensionality reduction. So here you understand that by dimension we want to say that how many features are going to predict the target. Okay, that is the dimension of the feature set. So if there is means lot of features, then it is not possible. So we have to think of some way out so that we can reduce the number of features and at the same time we can go for the correct prediction as much as possible. Okay, so now why dimensionality reduction? So there are a lot of reasons actually. So more features means more samples, of course. So if in a data set you have the database idea, so you know that if there are 100 records in a table and if there are 10 columns, then the volume of data, and if there are 100 columns, then it is like the data volume increases, so the number of samples increases, and more features increase the chance of overfitting. Okay, that's a problem, that if for generating the or the prediction for the target variable, if I have so many features, then it is if it is the like it is I am becoming too specific, right, too specific to generate the prediction, and that can cause overfitting. And maybe when I have the test data that too much of aligning to all the features, all the characteristics of the data set, then I may go wrong with the test data. So it is a chance of overfitting is also there when I have many more features. And it can remove redundant features and less important data. Okay, so means if I really can go for in a proper way in dimensionality reduction, then I can remove some redundant features, right? Redundant feature, a very good example is, suppose I in a table there are two columns, one is a date of birth and one is age. So you understand that I most of the times I don't really need these two. Maybe for safe side I can always remove age, and whenever required I can calculate. So there are a lot of redundant features most of the time. So if I can identify and remove, then it is going to improve my performance in the next level. And less important data, so for a data set, most of the time we can have some some initial understanding and analysis, we can find some less important data, so we can remove those data, right? If you remember, in exploratory data analysis we found that the cabin number of the passenger or the passenger name, those became less important, so we could remove those from the data set, right? So that is also one kind of dimensionality reduction. Then algorithms run faster for less amount of data. That is true every time, right? That if we have a huge data volume, then whatever may be your hardware configuration or whatever the best way your software is running, then performance will always be hampered. So if you have less amount of data, then your performance is going to be good every time, and more accurate results. Okay, so if I can reduce unnecessary and unimportant wrong features from the data set, then it can give me more accurate, more focused results, right? And then less storage space required. Of course, the storage is all about for the data volume. So if you have less number of features, so you have less quantity of data and less storage. Okay, then another term, that is curse of dimensionality. That is very important thing. That why curse of dimensionality? You understand that if any data set has lot of features, that means I have lot of information about the data set. But when I have that, then it actually, apparently it may seem that okay, I have lot of features about the data set, so I am very much knowledgeable and I can do the prediction in a more correct way. But sometimes it can be wrong, because as there is more data, it will take lot of space, the performance will go down, there can be some less important data which makes the prediction incorrect, or there can be some wrong data, there can be some redundant data. So all these things actually, instead of doing positive, they do negative for our work, right? So that is called the curse of dimensionality. So it is not always good to have lot of things with you in practical life. Also you understand that you have so many resources, then sometimes that cause something negative. So we have to think of some proper quantity of dimensions to have the best results in our predictions, in our machine learning models. So we have to avoid this curse of dimensionality. Okay, now comes the techniques, means how we are going to do. Actually broadly there are two ways. One is called feature elimination and the second one is called feature extraction. Okay, so we'll go one by one. First one is feature elimination. It is from the term elimination, you can understand it is removal of some variables completely. Means if I have some features, I can have some initial understanding, I can just remove some of the features completely, redundant with some other variable or not providing any information. So how do I select that which features will be removed? That I see that if there are some redundant features which is similar like other feature present, so I can keep one of them and the second one can be removed. And if there are some features which are actually not providing us any new information or any significant information, so I can remove them. Then comes that simple to implement and makes data sets small. Of course, means just removing a column from an Excel document, so it's very easy, right? In programming also it is very easy. And then of course, as you are removing the entire column, so for all the records that column data is removed, so your data set becomes small, right? So these are all the advantages, simplicity, and this very easy to implement. Your data set size becomes small, so your performance of course will improve. But the problem is that loss of information. So if we don't do it wisely, then that can cause problem, means we can lose some information, right? Okay, so there are many techniques through which I can do feature elimination. So I have mentioned some of them. First one is missing value ratio. You know that missing value is a problem, so I can set some ratio, right? That if any column has suppose more than 70% missing value, then it is better to remove, because anyway if we don't have the value for most of the columns, then putting some zero or some constant or some mean, that is not going to help most of the cases. So I can keep some threshold value, that okay, if more than 70%, more than 80% missing value, then I will just remove those columns from the data set. Then comes the low variance filter. Okay, low variance filter means that suppose there is a column having data for all the records, but that data does not vary much. Okay, it is all the same. Suppose I am doing some analysis on student data, right? So for all of you, if I mention one column or one feature as the class, so everyone will write BCS3. So it's like it has no variance, right, in the data. So if I have to do some analysis on student by student basis for particularly of your class maybe, so it's like all the same, right? So I can remove that column, because that anyway is not going to add any value to my prediction, because for all the records the value is same. So I can have some low variance filter mentioned, that if the data set variation means different data, if that is less than 20%, okay. So if I see that most of the 80% records are same, and only 20% or less are different, so maybe I'm not interested about that feature, so I can eliminate those. So what will be that filter value, what will be that threshold value, that totally depends on case to case basis. Then comes high correlation filter. So I can again keep some threshold. I told you that if some features are redundant or some features are very closely related, so if there are two features which are closely correlated, then it can be sometimes one of them can be removed safely. So I can have some correlation filter also, that if the correlation is greater than, suppose the correlation is greater than 0.7 or 0.8, then I can remove one of the features, because both of them are trending in the same direction in the same way. Okay, then comes this random forest or ensemble trees. Okay, we'll discuss on these techniques. These are some algorithms of part of machine learning, but for now you just understand that it's kind of I am doing the combination of features. Okay, I am just trying to do the generate the combination of different feature set, and I am seeing that how it is helping me in the prediction of the final output. So if some combination is really not taking me somewhere, then safely I can remove those features. So that is also one way that I am trying the combination of features, and I am trying to get that which combinations actually helping me to go forward for the next level of prediction of the outcome. Okay, so that is one way. Okay, then comes backward feature elimination. Backward feature elimination means it is like you take all the features at a time and then you try to remove one feature. Okay, So suppose you have n number of features, so first you take that how n number of features are helping you to do the processing, and then you just remove one feature and see how this n minus 1 features are working, right? And that you can do for all the features one by one, and then you can take the best result. And maybe you can see that okay, for a particular feature x, whether you add it in the set or you remove it from the set, it does not make much difference. Then you can remove that feature. That way you can do that. First you take entire feature set, then you can eliminate one by one. If you see that that feature is not of much difference, means whether you add that feature in your set or you remove that feature from your set, it is not making much changes. So in that case you can just eliminate that feature. And then comes just the opposite process, that is called the forward feature construction. So in this forward feature construction, it's like you take one feature at a time, then you check how it is processing, how it is working in the prediction, and then if you see that okay, it is working good, then you take another feature with it and then see the combination how it is working. Then if you see that okay, adding one particular feature is not working or it is not doing any significant improvement, then you can just remove that feature and then you can take another feature for the construction. And that way, with the all possible combination of features and the maximum number of possible features which give you the best result, you can keep only those feature set and rest of the features you can eliminate. But for this last two processes, you can understand that if there are a lot of features, then it's very difficult to implement and it's very time consuming. So I can implement these things only when there are very less number of features or less number of data also I have. So I can do all possible types of permutations and combinations of features, and I can generate the best one. So these are the ways for the feature elimination techniques. Okay, so let us go to the next one now. Okay, now we come to feature extraction. So feature elimination is like you are just removing some features on different criteria, and feature extraction means is the formation of new variables from the old variables. Okay, so I am actually not removing something, but I am changing the representation, how the data is getting represented. And sometimes it is one to one, means maybe from variable one variable I am creating another variable, and sometimes it may be combination of some variables data and I am creating a new variable, but I am not losing any information. So this is the difference between elimination and extraction. Elimination is simply eliminating any column, and extraction means here I am generating some some new formation of the old variables, and sometimes I'm just combining the old variables and generating less number of new variables. Okay, so in that way I am doing dimensionality reduction, but I am keeping everything, means there is the less chance of loss of information. That is the main disadvantage of feature elimination. So there are many techniques for feature extraction. So some of the important one of them are principal component analysis, in short PCA. Then comes independent component analysis, ICA, singular value decomposition, SVD, and T distributed stochastic neighbor embedding, that is called TSNE. So these are some of the techniques through which this feature extraction can be implemented. Okay, so I guess it is clear so far. So let us move to the next one. Okay, so we are going to discuss on one of those techniques, that is called principal component analysis. It is very important and very significant as well. Okay, it transforms the original n numeric dimensions of a dataset into a new set of n dimensions called principal components. So here, from the all the dimensions present, all the feature present, it generates some algorithm and it creates a new set of dimensions, and they are now termed as principal component. Okay, the first principal component has the largest possible variance, and then second, and so on. So so far I think we have discussed something about variance, so you understand that the features which have the maximum variance is going to help me better in the prediction, right? So if there is some feature which is almost the same, suppose I have to identify who are the good students in the class. So if I get, suppose, the grade of the students, and I get that okay, more than 80% students are having the maximum grade, or more than 90% number. So then if with such a low variance in the data, I cannot come to any outcome, right? That how I can predict that who are the best students in the class. So I need some data, some feature which will have many different values, variance in the data. So if that is present, then I can say that okay, this feature can help me in getting that which student is the best one, and after that, like that. So these are called the principal components. So this algorithm it works on the feature set, and it generates a new set of features which are having the first one. All are principal components. The first one is having the maximum variance, then the second one is having the next variance, then the third one is have the next variance, like that. Another important point is any principal component is uncorrelated with the preceding component. So that is also important, that suppose two of the components having variance, very good variance, but they are closely correlated, means they are like the same kind of thing. So suppose the date of birth and age, right? So if suppose there are people who are of different date of birth, different age, so it is like both the features are having high variance, but they are actually correlated, right? So as the date of birth increases, the age decreases, so they are closely related. So actually in reality, if there are two columns, date of birth and age as feature, then I can safely eliminate one of them. So when this principal component is calculated, they are arranged as per their variance, and they are uncorrelated. Okay, that's how it is created, it is formed. Only few initial principal components can be used as they contain maximum variance. So it is like just in the order. So if there are 100 features in a feature set, then principal component 1, 2, 3, 4, like that it is ordered. And most of the cases we'll find that maybe the first 10 principal components are having the maximum variance in the data set. So most of the time, maybe instead of taking all the 100, I can safely take first 10 or first 20 principal components, and it will give me almost the same result. So I can go to the very close to the predictions. Okay, that's the flavor of principal component analysis. Okay, and it is important that we implement standardization and normalization of data required, because you understand, as we have explained when we have discussed about standardization and normalization, that if the data has different scale, then it is like going to affect that how this prediction is calculated, the weightage. So it's very important that we use standardization across all the columns, and we do normalization across the rows, right? So that is important. So we should first implement standardization and normalization on the data, and then I should implement PCA. So these are all the good things about PCA, but there is a bad thing also. Problem is that the data set losses is interpretability. What does that mean? That when I get a data set, suppose for the students I got some data set, okay, their age, their marks, their grade, their past history of academics, etc. But when I run the PCA, then the columns or the features that were present in the original data set are removed, and you only have principal component 1, principal component 2, principal component 3, like that. And sometimes it may be very difficult that okay, principal component 1 means date of birth, you cannot go to that conclusion. Maybe you have from the entire data set. You have a lot of in-depth knowledge, and you know the variance, you know the trend, and then by seeing the principal components you can guess that okay, it is very close to age and this other column, like that. But when you have the data set in the PCA, after PCA, then you cannot directly map to any existing column. So when you have the data set after PCA, the interpretability is lost. So that is one disadvantage that we have to keep in mind. Okay, so we have discussed about this principal component analysis. So I will go to Jupyter Notebook and I will try to do some quick thing here. Okay, so fine. So this is the script in Jupyter Notebook for PCA. Here I have implemented this. First I am importing this NumPy and pandas. Then from sklearn I have imported this modules. Okay, this is not required now, so I have just implemented these two, fetch, OpenML and PCA. These two will be required. Okay, then I have imported matplotlib, okay, and Seaborn as well. So let us first run this. Okay, so it's working. Okay, in this exercise we are going to import the data set called MNIST. This is a very significant database for calculating PCA, because this data set is having a lot of records and lot of columns, because you have to implement PCA in such a data set which has a lot of columns, otherwise it is difficult to implement. So this is this data set are having some records of handwritten digits, so it's a very common data set. You can get more information in Google about it. So it's the handwritten digits 0 to 9, and it has some for each digit it's like the 28 by 28 pixels. That's why it comes to some 784 columns for each digit. Okay, so let us first import this. So it is actually part of sklearn library only, so we just mention this function fetch OpenML, and this is the name of the data set, and I am taking it in here. And this X and Y, if you remember that when we have splitted training and testing data, validation data, I had split it like that. So MNIST data, and this is the target, and this data what I am doing, I am just dividing by 255, so it's kind of standardization I am doing on the data. Okay, so as I told you that standardization and normalization as required should be implemented in your data set before you start doing PCA. So let us first execute this. So target is actually the output, means what is the digit. So you understand that this, it can be the possible values are 10 values 0 to 9, and this X actually it contains all the pixel value for each of the digit 28 by 28. Okay, so there will be 784 columns in X, and in Y there should be one column. So let us print this first. Let us execute it and print. Okay, so you can see that in X we have some 70,000 records and 784 columns, and in Y I have 70,000 records and one column only. Okay, so so you understand this data set has 784 features. From 784 features I am trying to predict this Y value. Okay, so here I have given the name of the columns like that. It's nothing but pixel 1, pixel 2, pixel 3, like that. So x dot shape, you understand, is 70,000. For 70,000, this shape 1 means it's like the 784, sorry. So for 784 value of I, it is just generating a name of columns, because I am just creating one data frame from this x. Okay, so here from x I am creating this data frame, and name of the column is from this, and then I am adding this y also from this this part, this data set, and then df label equal to, it's nothing but the value of y, but I am just converting it to the string value of I. Okay, so lambda is a concept where you can write just a function that for each of the I am generating stri, that's it. Okay, and then x y I'm just initializing them with none, and then I am going to print the size of the data frame. So let us execute this. So for each of the functionality we are using here, you can always go to Google and the documentation, Python and the specific library documentation, and you can have more and more information about it. Okay, so now you can see that the size of the data frame is 70,000. Of course 70,000 is the number of records, and column is 786 because I have two more columns, one is the y and one is the label. Okay, so let us have some view on the data, how it is looking like. So you can see pixel 0 to 0, 1, 2, like that, up to pixel 783, means 0 to 783. So it's like total 784 pixel values, and this is y, means from combination of all these pixel values actually generate this value y, and label is nothing but the string format of y. Okay, it's just the string conversion. Okay, then this label is nothing but the how the labels are looking like. So you can say it is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, etc. Okay, now what I am doing, so here I am going to take some records from the output. So as you know, there are 70,000. So here I am doing that, I am just doing the permutation with the shape 0, that means 70,000. I am generating some combination. Okay, combination of these values, so it is like the random number generation. So let us execute this, and now if you, I'm just trying to print how it is generated. So you can see that there are total 70,000 records, and these are the some values, means instead of doing in the serial order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I'm generating some random number. So 46,000, 48,000, 41,000, 54,000, like that, some random number is generated between 1 and 70,000. Okay, now what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to plot. Okay, some 16 for I in range 0 to 15. What I am going to do, I am taking this from this array, I am taking some of the numbers, some 16 numbers, just in random from 0 to 15. Okay, so just taking them and I am trying to plot them, that's it. So let us first execute this. Okay, so what I am doing, trying to do, so here you can see, so there are some, as you can see here, that I am doing subplot for 3 by 5, that means 3 rows and 5 columns, and there are total 0 to 15. So you understand, from 0 to 14 actually value of I, so it's like total 15 records, and these 15 matrices are printed here. You can see digit like 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So it's like it's getting printed. So this is the digit. So label, you can remember the y value I had just converted to string. So here what is the digit that is printed, and in in this box you can see it is just actually the 28 by 28 matrix of the pixels. So based on the pixels these records are generated. For some I have only taken some 15 records. Actually there are 70,000. We have just picked randomly some 15 records from it and we have plotted it. Okay, now I'm going to implement this PCA algorithm on this, and here I have taken n components equal to 3. What does that mean? That I will take the first 3 components. I will generate only the first 3 principal components. Okay, and here I am generating PCA result. I am calling the PCA.feed transform with the df of feed calls. You remember that is the data frame I have generated from the actual data set of these 70,000 by 784 column record set, and then in this data frame only I have added these 3 columns. So this is the first PCA value generated, first principal component, second and third. Okay, so let us execute this. So actually it will generate all the 784 principal components, but here I have taken only the first 3 components. Okay, it can generate all the principal components, but as I told you that most of the initial components will have the maximum variance. So here for simplicity we have taken only 3 components. So you can see that is the variance ratio. Okay, that is the variance ratio with the entire data set for these first 3 principal components. Okay, this is another way where I can call PCA. Here I have written that it should take all the principal components it should generate where it is 90% of variance is covered. So that is also another way. Here also you can get that how many principal components are generated. Okay, so and then you can take some of them as per your requirement. Okay, then I come here and here I am doing the scatter plot of PCA1 versus PCA2. Okay, I will first check that how these 2 PCA values are actually working. So I have taken only PCA1 and PCA2 because of course they have the maximum variance, and then the hue is y, so you understand that there will be for different values of y. I am trying to plot that what is the particular value for a particular combination of PCA1 and PCA2. Okay, and then this is nothing but a palette I have just created. Okay, so I'll do this one is the better one. So this is the scatter plot, and here I have taken this data set. Fine, this is the entire data set I have. So let us execute this. Okay, so some scatter plots are generated. So how it is working I will explain you. That suppose 0 is this dark blue color. So if you see the plot you can see that most of the dark blue color these dots are placed in a mostly in a single zone, right? This you can see that same color dots are there are some which are in the different locations, but most of them are in the same place. So what is the conclusion? Maybe that suppose all the ones I can generate for suppose for all the zeros, right? So all the zeros are having means for each record I know that some 784 pixels actually generate 1 digit, but here instead of 784 features I have taken only 2 features, and from only 2 features I am trying to generate the digit, right? And as I can go to that conclusion that as most of the blue dots are here, so they are all the zeros, so they are in the same zone. So that means only using PCA1 and PCA2 I can correctly identify most of the zeros, right? So instead of using 784 features I have only used 2 features and almost closely identified or predicted the outcome. So that is the flavor of PCA. So maybe it is not that much correct, because instead of 784 I have taken only 2 features to show, but it has given me a very close correct result. So I have just ignored many of the dimensions. So that is a dimensionality reduction technique, where I have taken only 2 principal components I have generated through algorithm, and these 2 principal components is helping me not 100% but very close to 100% generation of the correct output. So that is all about PCA. So that is the end of this session, and we will do some other topic in our next session. So for now, thank you.